And now I would like to invite the Business Development Director of Nova Sparks, Mr. Nicolas Karanis, on the stage to present his remarks about HFT in global markets.
Thanks. Hi. Okay, this works, so that's a good start. I need. Okay, I'm Nicolas Caronis. I'm working for Nova Sparks, and we're an FPGA company based in France. FPGA is something that you will hear a lot related to HFT. It's kind of like GPUs for AI. They're the necessary technology that allows to process everything in parallel, and that's what you need with volumes as they are in the markets today. Okay, so just a general thing about HFTs. It's obviously computer algorithms. Essentially, it's a spread game, so they capture very small spreads, and they need to do it consistently without losses, which means that they've got to have the right technology to do it. It's a little bit, the image that is often associated to HFTs is like picking pennies in front of the steamroller. So you need to pick a lot of pennies, and you need to be really fast. So where do they operate? In all liquid markets, all usually listed markets like stocks, futures, and now crypto. In most large markets, they capture something like 2/3 to 70% of the actual volume. Okay, so HFTs have been associated to speed, so speed has always been there. It's not anything new. So I started by getting this story from the first recorded bubble, which was the tulip mania in the 17th century. So essentially, they would trade tulips, which were worth a house or more. And there was a lot of information about tulips here and there. And essentially, the traders with the best boats would get an edge. Then in the 18th and 19th century, the fast technology for information was homing pigeons. And an interesting story is about actually Waterloo, whereby it's the myth is that the Rothschilds would know about the result of Waterloo before anybody else. So they supposedly made a killing by buying London and selling Paris or something. Probably untrue, but it's an interesting anecdote. And then, of course, you have the telegraph, and 100 years ago, before the 1929 crash, everybody had some form of real-time ticker plant in its office. Okay, so what have we today as far as best-in-class goes? So FPGAs. FPGA means, you don't need to retain the acronym, but it essentially means low latency and determinism, which means that whatever the data, you can get consistently the results of that data without buffering or anything of that nature. About networks, so I'll have a slide afterwards summing up the different networks, but you see a lot of microwave or millimeter, which is essentially taking back an old technology, which is radio, and bringing it back, because we'll see that radio is actually faster than fiber. Of course, you've got fiber, which are necessary for big bandwidth and big data, which is used in the co-location provided by exchanges, and the massive data centers, which we know today with the exchanges that have upped their game and are able to process hundreds of thousands of transactions per second. Okay, so a recap about the best network that we've got. Obviously, fiber obviously covers the planet. You can get 10 gigs now, ubiquitous, but a lot of exchanges have moved to 40 gigs, such as Opera, for instance, for doing options in the US. And we'll be getting at some point of time in the near future 100 gigabits. So the only issue with fiber is that it's not speed of light, so you get about 30% that is lost in refraction or something. And so to get speed of light, you need to go to the older technologies, which are around radio. So in microwave and millimeter, so these are essentially, they're built with towers, but you have a limitation in bandwidth. So microwave is used typically between cities like New York to Chicago to do an arb between the equity and the future. And millimeter is used within cities, urban, such as London urban or New York urban. So you have 100 megabits to a gigabit. They cost a lot of investments to build. They were reserved for people with deep pockets a few years ago. Now they've been democratized through vendors. And you even have now HF, which is even longer distance, so across continents. So you can get HF from New York to London or New York to Asia somewhere, which is essentially radio, but obviously you cannot build towers over the oceans, so you send a radio signal, but it's a few kilobytes. So this costs even more, millions of dollars of investment to get huge towers to send a few kilobytes across oceans. Okay, so you can't talk about HFTs without addressing the elephant in the room, which is usually their reputation. So a lot of it bad, some of it deserved. So I've summed up what I do know and what is mostly associated with HFTs. And I'll counter that most of the hacks, bugs, or tricks are mostly going away. So flash crashes, obviously. You've got some form of manipulation by sending a lot of orders pre-open or something. Multi-login, multi-line, so this is when exchanges allow multiple lines or multiple logins, but to ensure fairness, but actually when you have multiple logins, there's usually one of the logins that is faster than the others, and the HFTs could find out which one is which. So this led to some unfair advantages sometimes. The one that I do like best is the negative latency. I'll take a second to explain that because it's kind of hard. So let's suppose that you've got an order that is, back in the days, a big message like 400 bytes, and you want to be really fast, so the way to do it is actually to send the order before you know what the order is. So I explain myself. So let's suppose you've got 400 bytes of message, and you've got 200 bytes of technical headers and other information. You send that on the wire, and when you are okay on quantity, price, side, and instrument, you send the rest. So it involves high-level trickery, but back in the days when you had 100 megabits networks, and every 100 byte would translate it to 8 microseconds. So if you win 100 bytes by sending it that way, you are 8 microseconds ahead of everybody else. One other common advantage is the canary in the mine. So this involves something that is being gradually corrected today, which is public data versus private data. Private data is your own execution. So let's suppose you have an order at 99, it gets hit, but the public market data shows 100, 101. So you know that the market is going down before everybody else because the information that is public is not up to date with the information that you got from your own execution. So now, I advocate that there's essentially all these tricks are slowly becoming obsolete because of two things. The exchanges have upped their game. So, for instance, most exchanges, obviously there are 10 gigs and they are small messages, which makes everything simpler and harder to manipulate stuff. There is some form of pre-trade check that is introduced gradually by all exchanges. So if you're allowed to trade 1 billion, that's it. After your billion, you will be stopped by the exchange. And there's also improved real-time supervision to detect things such as unfair behavior, quote stuffing, or manipulation of some sort. Market data, so the canary in the mine advantage I talked about before is kind of disappearing gradually. This is hard to do. Not all exchanges have implemented it, but it's getting there. So we've got fast market data and market data that is public, that is ahead of the one that you get from your own executions. The infrastructure is getting way better. 10 gigabytes, I said 40 gigs is on the way. The messages are going from a few hundred bytes a few years ago to 60 bytes or something today. And there's also some things on the infrastructure side whereby people would try to get as close as possible to the matching engine by being in the next building or when in the same building, having shorter cables and all these things. Most exchanges now allow actually implement same length cabling, which essentially negates all the little tricks that people could do. Just to think, this is about 1 nanosecond. So which nanosecond in the speed of light. So if you've got a 10-meter advantage, that's 10 nanoseconds, which can be a lot. Okay, vendors such as my own company. So FPGA used to be available only to people who could spend millions of dollars on it. So now it's widely available through vendors. So mostly for market data, but also for things such as pre-trade checks or tick to trade on a single FPGA within a microsecond, for instance. Microwave, millimeter wave, RF solutions now are also available. Again, used to be only for deep-pocketed HFTs. And you've got all kinds of gear that is extremely competitive, the new network cards, layer 1 switches, which allow to distribute data within 4 nanoseconds, and as I said, the upgrade of the networks that is coming online. Okay, so once you get all these things, arguably, everybody gets the benefits of HFTs once the exchanges and the vendors allow for a fair level playing field. So you have increased liquidity. A lot of the HFTs are actually providing liquidity. You've got tighter spreads, and you've got the insurance that the price that will be out there will be the right price. Because if it is not the right price, the HFTs will put a spread that reflects the right price. Yeah, some of the examples of what we do to put some numbers on it on the biggest markets, that's what my company does. So market data. So since COVID actually has increased a lot of volumes, volatility, and all the technical specifics. So we've got 3 or 4 times increase of volume and live orders. And actually about market data, we do latency at now substantially under 500 nanoseconds. So this is to process the whole book and give to the algo exactly what the algo needs. So if the algo is trading 10 equities on BIST, it will only get those 10 equities and will not spend any CPU clock time on calculating market data. Most important, as I said, the FPGA market data is consistent. So whenever the Fed speaks or the Fed announces or there is a news, you can stay in the market, which is very hard to do if you don't have FPGAs, if you don't have the right technology. So for BIST, we're connected to BIST as well, so the numbers are slightly better because BIST has implemented the NASDAQ protocol essentially, and the volumes are a little bit lower, so it's under 450 nanoseconds probably. One other main area of implementation is which is mostly applies to the States, where you have 15 ETNs that are essentially exchanges which compete with each other. So you need to have the SIP, which is essentially an aggregation of price, because if you want to trade competitively, you have to aggregate bid and ask from all the ETNs to properly choose where to trade, to have a smart order routing system of a modern denomination. So one of the advantages of FPGAs is that we save space, we save real estate in data centers. So what would take probably 20 servers to do in CPUs, we can do it essentially with one device that aggregates the data feeds from the 15 ETNs and get the results within 1 microsecond. So my point is that HFTs, they do not bring fairness to the market, but when the market is modern, properly organized, properly regulated, they bring advantages to everyone. One of the latest tendencies proving that there's a kind of merge between the old world of just HFT and the old world of asset managers is that asset managers now have their hands on the best technology, so they're pretty competitive in getting best execution. And HFTs don't often enough, they don't rely on speed only, so they can take directional risk, which they didn't used to get 10 years ago. So essentially, that's it for my point. And I'll be happy to meet you afterwards or take any questions. Thank you.